After the disappointment of Soul Calibur 4, many fans were left a little dissatisfied with certain aspects of the game, with a story that at best felt glazed over, and the flawed but commendable soul gauge and critical finish mechanic. Soul Calibur just wasn't quite the same compared to its predecessors before it, and it showed. Though it still had many good points to it, mainly with its gameplay, a diverse roster of characters to choose from, and the greatly improved but equally imperfect character creation mode, the soul of the series still weakly thrived in it, and even in its fanbase. Even if it was a little disappointing, but it could still be forgiven as it was the first Soul Calibur game to come out on the next-gen consoles at the time, after Soul Calibur 3's exclusive release on the PS2. Now Soul Calibur 5 has come out with a lot of hype prior to its release. I, like many others, were very excited and wondered what would the final product be like. And now that I have the game in my hands, I can give you my thoughts on this latest installment from my most favourite fighting game franchise. Does this game transcend history in the world of the Soul series? Or should this tale be left eternally untold? Let's find out, shall we? Taking place 17 years after Soul Calibur 4, the story follows Patroclus, one of the few newest characters to the series, who is searching for his long-lost sister, Pyrrha, working under Grand Dumas in hopes of finding his kidnapped sister, while also killing people believed to be infected by Soul Edge dubbed the Malfested by order of Dumas. But after meeting with a strange Castlevania Twilight cosplayer called Zwei in battle, he becomes heavily involved in the conflict between Soul Calibur and Soul Edge, along with his sister. The story is probably one of its most glaring problems, as it is extremely short, it is also heavily cliched, and has poor flow and pacing where it feels like you're rushing through the story, and you swear certain scenes should have came much later. And even though the cutscenes are appreciated and better than Soul Calibur 4's text crawl intros and one ending cutscene, the cutscenes in this game go from really great when using the in-game engine, but when it comes to the storybook drawings, it's hard to tell what is happening sometimes, and feels kinda lazy on their part, even if it does fit the style of the franchise. But the most obvious fault that is within the game's story is that unlike the past games of the franchise, it only concentrates on Patroclus, Pyrrha, and on a couple occasions, Zwei, forcing you to play as one of these characters on each chapter, which is just one battle that lasts for 3 rounds. It's really mind-boggling why Namco would choose to do this, when the series' main strong point was to let you choose a character and experience their own tale within the conflict. So if you want to know why Cervantes is not undead anymore? Never explained! Want to know what Mitsurugi's part in the story is? Never brought up! You want to know who these guys are? Well, so do I! Seriously, characters are introduced and gone faster than you can kick an annoying freeloader out of your house. And most of the characters that are playable don't even make an appearance in story mode. So unless you read about them on a wikia, you're not going to know who the heck the new characters are, what they are like, and how they fit into the story alongside veterans of the series, and how the already established characters are what they became, or how they are involved with the plot. Save for some lines of dialogue before and after fights that are vague or don't pertain to anything, make it hard to judge a character, empathize with them, or let alone like them. And the worst thing is that Patroclus, the main hero we have to follow, and we learn the most about, is a complete and utter twat that you would wish Siegfried would bitch slap the smug, whiny bastard with his huge sword.
Just shut up! What do you know?
So the adventure is really short and not as epic as it should have been, and this is coming from the collaboration of the Namco team that created great ways to experience the story before, and CyberConnect 2 who worked on the Naruto Ultimate Ninja story modes, and they offered more freedom than this story, which gives us the illusion of choice when there isn't even one. Thankfully, I can safely say at the very least that the gameplay is really great as per usual to the Soul Calibur series. Despite the animations being made a touch faster, the fighting is still pretty much intact, with the veterans having most of their moves untouched, save for either a couple of changes for new characters who are students to certain staple characters, or a couple of new moves being added. The roster consists of a good 27 of old and new characters, 28 if you've got the Dampierre pre-order bonus, with their own unique fighting styles, some that will be familiar to seasoned players, and some other interesting new styles to master, like Viola's Claw and Magic Ball of Energy, and Zwei with his free-handled blade and Sumbul Wolf Spirit. The only questionable thing about the cast of characters is that 3 of these characters you unlock are mimic characters that copy other people's styles. That is 3 Mokujins in one game. This is just a questionable decision and seems more like a waste of space for characters with their own unique styles that we could have had. Instead we have 2 of these mimic type of characters when we already have 1. I know in the past we've had 2 mimic characters in one game, but 3 is just going overboard and just seems pointless. Luckily, the rest of the cast, along with the clever inclusion of Assassin's Creed's Ezio Auditore, makes up for this.
May no one remember your name.
Where's my paycheck? When it comes to the fighting, every character has their own strengths and weaknesses, like some are very powerful but lack speed, while others lack reach but can really be fast in whittling damage from you if they are close enough, and so on. But far as I could see, save for Nightmare, who is a really cheap bastard with lots of power, the characters have their own advantages in combat, which balances out the battles quite nicely. And the battle system is still as enjoyable as the last Soul Calibur games. The controls and how you fight still follow the same formula, where you can move, dodge and run in any direction, and you have your standard horizontal slash, vertical slash, kick and guard buttons. And the old Soul tradition of ring outs are still present, though now with less presence on most stages. But this time round, they bring back the soul gauge system, but heavily modified. Basically how it works is that over time when you're attacked or attacking, this meter here will fill up, and as it fills you can use a Brave Edge, which is like a more powerful version of a combo or grapple, depending on the character you're using, or you can save it till you get a stock and use a really powerful critical edge, where you unleash a super special, a la Street Fighter, and surprisingly this system really adds a new layer of strategy to the gameplay, and most times you may find yourself needing it more often than not to act as an equalizer against your opponents. I honestly found this aspect a lot of fun, but it would have been helpful if there was a tutorial put in place for the newcomers to the series who are not accustomed to this sort of gameplay style. It's like Namco expects everyone to be psychic or great detectives like Batman. And with a strong fighting system, one would think there would be a plethora of modes to go through. Sadly, that is not the case. This is the second problem with the game. Other than story mode, there is only offline versus mode, which is self-explanatory, and arcade mode, and I can say that this is, without a shadow of a doubt, the worst arcade ever. Remember how I complained you can't find anything about any of these characters? This is why. No intro or ending cutscenes await you here, as there are only 6 opponents to fight, and then that's it. It's like the game is saying, "Oh look, you beat 6 guys, and we got you nothing! Wasn't that fun?" The only thing it's good for is getting player level points, which unlock new items for creation, stages, and other things as you level up. The only other modes are Legendary Souls mode, which serves as a good way to challenge yourself as the difficulty is much harder, and Quick Battle mode, where you fight many character-created opponents of the world. There is literally over 150 plus opponents to fight here, and it's fun for a while, but it doesn't take long for it to get quickly stale. There is also an online mode where you can battle other players from around the world, as you would expect. Now I own the PS3 version of the game, and when playing online I never noticed much lag, unless the person on the other end had a bad connection to me. So the netcode and its online functionality are really strong to play against your friends and other Soul Calibur players. And while waiting in the online lobby system, you can watch other fights and you can interact with other players waiting to go into the next fight, which makes a nifty feature while you're waiting for your turn to play. And finally, I come to one of the most addictive and time-consuming things ever, the creation mode. Basically, much like the past 2 installments, you can create your own fighter, and they have slightly improved it with more options, from adding accessories on any part of the body, placing stickers, changing the weapon's color if it's not the default weapons, and even adding a manifestation effect to the voice, so you can sound like a Hollow from Bleach. This is probably the one reason I highly recommend this game, as creating your own character with all these little details and touches really personalizes your fighter's design, and with 50 data slots of space to create your own characters or even modify one of the existing characters in the roster, will be more than enough to create a large cast of your own characters, especially if you are creative. The only gripe I have with this is that you have to choose from a list of existing styles still. It would have been better if we could create our own unique fighting styles, though we can only hope that would be the next step for the creation mode in the next game. On the technical side of things, the graphics are really detailed and pretty good to look at. Character models are rendered well, the animations are fluid, and the fights don't seem to suffer from any slowdown, especially when you consider all the action going on in the background. The places you can fight in really set the stage for battles, and look really awesome with the amount of detail put into the background of the stages. While visual effects in battles still look impressive, the character designs are interesting, armor breaking returns from Soul Calibur 4 to add a fanservice-y realism to the battles, and you can even set how realistic or exaggerated the slashes and blows sound when they hit the opponent in the game's options. If there were any downsides to its presentation, it would have to be that the voice acting is extremely wooden, which is more noticeable in story mode, while the narrator's lines are well written, but how he delivers them sounds like he is telling a children's bedtime story.
Here, where souls gather, your soul defines everything.
And the music, while having some beautiful pieces that sound epic, most of the others just sound forgettable at best. But other than that, it's a well-crafted game. So, where do we leave off from here? Without comparing it to its past predecessors, it's a decent game with its diverse cast of characters, a strong character creation mode, great gameplay with a soul gauge system that works wonderfully with the combat, and a strong online mode that will keep you busy for a while. But due to its lack of single player options, poor execution in telling a good epic yarn, and questionable decisions on the developers' part of not giving us a proper arcade with character intros and endings to learn about our beloved characters, this game has too many chinks in its armor that can't be ignored on its own, and even more so if you ever consider what the Soul series was truly capable of in its past installments. It's not exactly a bad game, but it just feels like the soul of this game was incomplete in many cases. But what we do have here slightly makes up for it, but it's pretty much a mixture of the good and bad to get through. But when coming from 4 and walking to 5, it feels like a step forward or many steps backwards in the game's making. Let it be decreed that a rental is necessary, before you decide it's your destiny to pay full fare for this short, fun but dull journey. See you next time, folks.
You possess great strength, but nothing else.
I am a holy warrior! You bitch!